Good evening aviators and welcome back to the Soaring Show. The season is rapidly coming to a close, which means there's less on the agenda, but there are still a few things worth mentioning. Today will be an AD heavy show. We'll also tell you about LXNAV clinics, gliding career job opportunities, winter activities, the future of the show, and this week we interviewed Andy Davis about team flying. It was a good one, so stay tuned. First up, the icon of the UK gliding scene, the Piper Pawnee, is under threat. The Argentinian Aviation Authority issued an airworthiness directive. The issue at hand is spar corrosion. Corrosion was found in the front and rear spars of the wings, and cracks were found in the front spar. The AD is a bit of a challenge at the moment, as the service bulletin is only available in Spanish, it requires eddy current test, and the replacement part availability and legality are all a bit wishy-washy. The bottom line is the CA issued a temporary extension on all things associated with the eddy current inspection, but if your club uses a Pawnee, then you must perform the corrosion inspection within the next 10 flight hours from the 18th of September. It might also be a good idea to make sure you're winch current. Staying on the topic of ADs, the DG Elevator Rod End AD deadline is looming. Try saying that 6 times. A quick reminder for those who don't remember, for most DG 100s and 200s and all DG 300s and 400s, you must replace the rod end by the 16th of October. All later DGs must be inspected by the 16th of October, and if they fail, the part must be replaced before the next flight. You may also require a roller bearing. Early DG 100s and 200s may require a special part, and DGs with an all-flying tailplane are exempt. We have seen lead times varying from 2 to 12 weeks, so make sure you order your parts soon. To try and make this process a bit easier for you, we have now added the parts to our website. LXNAV want to run an online clinic for existing LXNAV users who wish to learn more about their devices. LXNAV are specifically focused on the LX9000-8000 range, so we're thinking about running some nav voice clinics for everything else. You'll find a sign-up sheet in the description of this video. Please register your interest, and if there's enough of it, we'll set up some sessions over the winter months. Speaking of winter months, it can be a dull time in gliding, particularly if you fly at a flatland site, but there are a few events coming up to tide us over. Cotswold Gliding Club, for example, are organising a bonfire night with a pyro display on the 26th of October. That same weekend, the Mind is hosting round 1 of the Junior Winter Series. And don't worry if you're not a junior, because junior gliding is always looking for instructors and 2-seater gliders. If you are a junior, go sign up. There's some epic flying to be had, but make sure you bring a warm coat and a good sleeping bag. Navboys are now the UK distributor for Synoptica simulators, so we're thinking of hosting some Condor events. Let us know in the comments if that is something you'd be interested in. Also, we're expecting to take delivery of our demo sim very soon. If you're interested in testing it out, then hit us up. A final note from me on winter. Staying at your flatland side and doing circuits can be extremely demoralising, and finding the motivation to get up in the morning, go to your gliding club knowing that you're not going to get very much done is just not the way to do gliding. So if you can, take a glider, go to a ridge site and enjoy some wave and ridge soaring, because it is incredibly fun and it does keep you current. In other news, Lasham is hiring. They are currently on the lookout for 2 deputy CFIs, so if being paid to do gliding sounds like something you'd be interested in, go have a look at the job postings link below. And now onto the future of the show. With pumpkin spice lattes now actively being advertised in your local Costa, it's getting quite hard to find gliding news, and the weekend soaring forecast probably won't be much use either. So we're going to ramp down the Soaring Show to once a month. This means we can focus on making more videos like the recent Mylar video, hosting Condor sessions, or even developing some new content streams. We have a lot of ideas that we're excited about, so please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out. I now hand over to Jake with the weather, and then please enjoy the interview with Andy Davis.
Thank you, Dorian. Right, let's get into the weather. So, looking at the surface pressure chart for the weekend, this is midnight Friday night going into Saturday. We've got a sort of weak low front well to the south of the UK, and a generally sort of easterly airflow throughout most of the weekend. Not really a significant amount of frontal weather. You can see a few trough lines around on the south of the UK on Saturday. And then on Sunday, going into Sunday, we've got maybe the risk of a few small, quite new looking frontal features. So suggests there's going to be a lot of cloud around looking at that, but not a lot of wind by the looks of it. I'm looking at Cambridge because it's looking like the weather's going to be best there, at least on the Saturday. So on Saturday it's looking sunny and cloudy, which is a good sign. 23 degrees is the top temperature between 1 and 4 p.m, and light easterly flow forecast. Gusting 25, so a decent gust, which suggests there should be thermic activity. Visibility is good, and let's just cross-reference that with the BBC. So the BBC reckons there's going to be a chance of showers, which, looking at those surface pressure charts, would probably tie into those trough features that we saw. Then a quick glance at Sunday. Sunday, a risk of showers as well, but looks relatively similar otherwise to Saturday, and on the BBC suggests a much higher chance of showers or just straight up rain by the looks of it on Sunday. SkySight, so this is the potential flight distance forecast for Saturday. I'm doing this forecast on a Thursday, so it's not the latest run. I'd make sure you look at this obviously in the morning. Potential flight distance is looking pretty limited, as you can see, across much of the UK, but if anyone's going to be able to go anywhere, it's going to be possibly Lasham, but unfortunately the best weather looks like it's under the London TMA airspace as usual. But Cambridge look like they should have a weather window. So we'll look at a point wind gram for Cambridge. And this is just quite a nice overview to show. We've got time along the bottom here, we've got altitude across the left here, so going up the scale, and this gives quite a nice indication. We've got thermal strength shown by these colours, so it looks like around Cambridge during the middle of the day, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m, we should be seeing thermal strengths at 2.3 knots. The earliest thermal starting just after midday and then dying off just after 5. Cloud bases are indicated somewhere between sort of 3,000 and 4,000 feet, getting up towards 4 as the day goes on, and we can see by these wind barbs we've got a light easterly flow pretty much straight up the boundary layer, doesn't really change much. And not a huge amount of upper level cloud. This all looks quite clear and blue, so quite a lot of cloud at the boundary layer level, but not a significant amount or no real upper level cloud throughout the day. And we'll take a look at Sunday. Sunday, you can see, is a different story. So yeah, Sunday, a lot of cloud, a lot of rain, a lot of upper level cloud. Wind is largely similar throughout the day, so it's looking like Sunday's going to be a washout. And let's just have a look at the rain map as a point of interest. Yeah, quite a lot of rain over the majority of the south of the UK on Sunday. Scotland looks like it gets away with it, and we'll just have a quick look at the wave while we're here. Just see, yeah, no real forecast wave either for the Scottish guys. So yeah, Saturday looks like a good day. Sunday not so good. Let's look at what the other forecasters say. Dave Masson hasn't done his forecast yet, so make sure you check that before you go flying. Sid has not done a forecast for Sunday yet, but Dunstable, Phil has done a forecast. So he's saying for the weekend, quite a bit of cloud, chance of a shower on Saturday. Sunday looking more showery and chance of a thunderstorm. So that's the weather for the weekend. For many of you, it might be better for spending some time in the workshop. Okay, up next is Andy Davis' interview. Thanks for watching.
I'm Andy Davis, current open class national champion, and have been flying competitions now for almost longer than I care to remember, but certainly I flew my first competitions way back 1975 and 76, and I've always continued flying competitions ever since, and I've been gliding ever since.
The whole point of the show is to inspire people and help them learn about gliding, what is possible in gliding and what you shouldn't do in gliding. And you're here to tell us a story about a day where you really sort of sacrificed your flight for someone else and showed them how to win the day.
Yeah, so this goes back to the Worlds in 2006 in Sweden, and it would be ever so easy to talk about the great flights that won something big, but I think it's nice to talk about the great flights that went really well, that didn't necessarily win something big, but that are really burned into my memory and were just, I could say afterwards, man, that was a fantastic flight and I really contributed to something. So to give a little bit of background, in 2006, I was the reigning standard class world champion. I was going to defend my title at Eskilstuna in Sweden. And we had a really strong team going. In the standard class, Lee Wells and Jez Hood were my teammates. Jez was the reigning junior world champion, and our training and preparation had gone pretty well. But, competition flying sometimes requires a bit of luck. And on one of the days in that particular competition, my luck kind of ran out by some misfortune, really, in so much as we were team flying quite closely. And I was running just ahead of my teammates. Either Jez or Lee was saying, the air's better on the left, Andy. And I was thinking, really? I'm coming down like a ton of bricks here. And they were saying, the air's better on the left. And I kept moving left and stronger and stronger sink as we went up this line of showers. And they kept saying, the air's better on the left. Anyway, after I got really low and had wasted a load of time digging myself out of a hole, I was miles behind and ended up losing a ton of points on the day. In the day wash-up afterwards, we realised what had gone wrong. There was one other Discus 2 with identical markings to mine flying in the comp, and they were looking at that one, not me. So there you go. So, luck sometimes plays a part, but the result of that basically was that I took myself out of the competition, and as far as getting onto the podium was concerned, Lee and Jez continued to fly extraordinarily well together as a team. They'd flown together a lot more than I'd flown with them. And by the time we got round to the last day, Lee was sitting in a podium position. He was in first place, and Jez, I think, was lying third or second going into the last day. But they were very strongly placed, and so it became my role going into the last day as their teammate to support them and do what I could to help them finish the competition at the top. I asked Lee and Jez what they wanted me to do, and Lee said, can you just fly a few minutes ahead of us, Andy, and feedback the conditions, where you're getting the climbs, what you're doing, and all the rest of it. So that's exactly what happened. I started the task. It was like 350k, something like that. But I started the task a few minutes ahead of them, and as luck would have it, just really could understand what was going on the day and was really in tune with the weather and just absolutely romped along. By the time we'd gone round the first or the second turning point, I'd got away somewhat from Lee and Jez, and we were coming up towards a very big lake crossing going south to north over it. Just before getting to the lake, I got myself a good climb that took me right up to cloud base, and it made the lake crossing easy. And having crossed the lake, I connected with the conditions on the other side and continued on. But neither Lee or Jez were quite so fortunate and didn't get the good climb and crossed the lake relatively low and arrived on the north side quite low. It would be fair to say that Lee wasn't in a very good frame of mind, sounding very pessimistic. They sounded like they were in trouble. So I said, well, guys, what can I do to help? And Lee said, can you come back and find me and help me, Andy? So, yeah, I turned around, flew back towards the north shore of the lake that we just crossed, and eventually located Lee, who by now was pretty low down, opened the air brakes and went down and joined him, and actually joined just underneath him, where he was in some very weak lift, just trying to stay airborne. But as I said earlier, on that particular day, I just felt really in tune with the conditions, and I really felt I understood what was going on. So I said, come on, Lee, we've got to move on. I'm going to go and find us another climb. So I just pushed on a little bit, up a little line of clouds, and sure enough, located another pretty good climb, actually. Just caught it instantly and climbed away quite strongly. So I'd called Lee into it, but Lee joined underneath and had missed the bubble, basically. So he was still struggling at the bottom. And by this time, this climb was filled with a lot of climbing gliders, a big gaggle had joined. So once again, I opened the air brakes, circled down around the outside of the gaggle, climbing in the thermal, right down to the bottom, in underneath Lee, closed the air brakes, and we found some more lift, up we climbed, and on we went. And that was really how the story of the rest of the task went. I felt that I pulled Lee round, and he finished the task and did what was necessary. He became world champion. I felt really satisfied afterwards in that I felt, well, it was one of those flights where I hadn't won anything. I'd probably given up a day win and came fairly low down the rankings on the day, but I'd achieved something really, really useful for the team and for my teammates. And perhaps the nicest moment of all afterwards was as we got back to the parking, Lee came up and said, "I love you, Andy." And I guess that was just the most wonderful moment. Yeah.
Once you were out of the competition, that must have been quite difficult, I imagine. I mean, I've only dipped my toes into competition. When I was in a position where I knew I couldn't recover, I was losing for reasons that weren't really my fault. It was quite hard to maintain that motivation to keep going. And the second I got into that mindset of like, well, this is terrible, it was quite hard to recover from that. So how did you stay flying despite knowing the fact that the competition was basically over for you?
Yeah, but in sport, it's really important to accept that everybody in sport, any form of sport, is going to have a bad day now and again. Things aren't going to go right for them. It's very important to be able to put that behind you. Learn the lesson, if there's a lesson to be learned, and which in the example I gave, we learned the lesson. My teammates had misidentified the wrong glider, and that was the lesson we learned, and we got on with it. But to put it behind you, because it's no good dwelling on what happened in the past. You always have to look forward to the future. And of course, there is always a chance that everybody else will have a total calamity, and you'll ride up in the rankings in the end. So I guess I've always been very positive in that respect. Don't get easily demoralized, and I'm always able to put the mistakes to the back of my mind and get on with the job in hand and looking forward.
Having a demoralized teammate who's fighting for the win, how did you find getting out of that slump while also still racing?
Well, in that case, it was just a matter of helping. I was prepared to completely sacrifice my own flight to help my teammate, and it worked. And that in itself was an extraordinarily satisfying experience. And at other competitions I've done, I've had some great teammates where I've been the one who's ended up on the podium, and to a greater or lesser extent sacrificed their own flights in order to help me get there when it came down to it on the last day.
Obviously, the instrumentation has changed over the years. Some of the rules have changed over the years. Have things like team flying changed, or is that still roughly the same?
Team flying has always been a big part of it. When I started flying in the British team, which was a long time back, I did my first Worlds in crikey, I almost can't remember. When did I do my first Worlds? 1981. We really didn't fly as a team. Not in the air, for sure. It was very rare to fly and team fly with a teammate, but it became obvious to me over the probably following 10 years that the teams that effectively flew well as teams in the air, and I don't necessarily mean pair flying as such, but if they flew really well as teams in the air, they were getting much better results than we were. We started to make an effort to fly together as a team, to try and make 2 and 2 equal 5, if you like, and done well, it certainly helped. The coaching effort we put in to help with the team flying certainly helped the British team results enormously. There's no doubt that by the time we got through to the 2000s, the early 2000s, the British team was clearly the best team in the world because we were applying the team flying principles really well.
Can you talk a bit more about that? Because loads of people won't know about team flying to start with.
Team flying, some people think that team flying means pair flying, that you formation fly around together with your teammate. But the problem with doing that is that, firstly, you probably get in each other's way in the thermals. But secondly, it can mean that you just both end up going at the speed of the slowest pilot. So what always worked well for me was what I would just call loose formation flying. So the gliders were separated typically by 0.5 kilometre, 1 kilometre, but it could be more. could be several kilometers, but were constantly giving each other information about where under the cloud the lift was best, what thoughts they have about the next routing. Should we go to the right? Should we go to the left? Should we go out over that town? Should we follow that line of cloud, go over that mountain, or whatever? We were constantly sharing ideas, and by constantly sharing ideas, it would very often stop one of the two teammates making a dumb decision, because you'd say, well, I'm going to go over that town because, and the other would say, well, are you absolutely sure? Haven't you seen the big fire over the mountain on the right, or whatever? And you'd look and say, oh, crikey, yeah, I hadn't seen that. And so you might change your mind and do something else. Effective team flying would mean that where you've got one glider running ahead and they pull into a really good climb, for example, they'll call their next pilot straight to it. It might be that the first glider running ahead has started to turn in what they think is a thermal, but they're not getting centered, so the next one will come in and perhaps turn the opposite direction and search the other side of the cloud, and the two of them will be comparing vario readings so that they can both join the glider that's climbing fastest. So that would be sort of at a basic level. Then if one glider gets into trouble and gets low and can't find any lift, or has flown for a long way without finding any lift, they'll warn their teammate and say, you better stick with the 2 knots back there because there's nothing ahead. And so again, this helps. This makes sure that at least one of the pair avoids the mistake that can cause a lot of problem for the first one. And of course, if it's done well, what typically happens is the glider that's getting the benefit of all the information coming back very often passes and overtakes the one in front, but then it's that glider's feeding information back. So the glider that was originally in the lead is now behind, then overtakes the teammate again, and the two gliders leapfrog each other, so they go along faster than a single glider on its own will do. And that's when I say, when it works really well, you make 2 + 2 = 5.